What is good, everybody? My name is Karsten Craning and I am back again with another YouTube video. Today I want to take you guys through my own personal style journey, or my clothing evolution. If you guys didn't know, I was like a total opium, Rick Owens, Destroy Lonely type of vamp way before it was cool, almost half a decade before. And I want to tell you guys a little bit about that, how my style has changed over time for a few reasons. Reason number one, if you're a longtime viewer of me, you may have noticed that my style has changed in the past year or so, as I've been more unactive on YouTube, and I want to give kind of an explanation of that as well as just tell my story as a whole. Second reason is in the past month or two, I've gotten almost a lot more subscribers and a lot more new followers who are interested in the channel because I've been posting a lot more. I want to kind of introduce myself, talk about why I'm into clothing. First off, I was never really into clothing or art or anything of the sort in elementary or middle school. I was just kind of awkward at the time, and I bought whatever my mom would buy me from the mall. And I wasn't really into anything besides iFunny. But then when I entered into high school, a lot of things happened. First of all, I just kind of grew into myself and my own body. And because of that, I started getting more motivated to look nicer and a little bit more cooler, that kind of thing. So I started dressing a little bit better. Second of all, I got really big into music. I got really big into the sort of underground, alternative, indie house show scene that was going on in Minneapolis, but also bands that were touring from other cities as well. There were bands like The World is a Beautiful Place, I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, Alex G, Foxing, and then also this band which the name wouldn't go fly today, Preoccupations, Proto-Martyr, Ice Age, and then I was also just generally into a lot of older punk and alternative bands as well, such as Sonic Youth, The Smiths, Joy Division, anything that could kind of broadly be described as punk or punk adjacent music, I really loved. And through that love, I got into band tees. Never anything too expensive or crazy. At the same time, there was a broader thing happening in fashion culture at 2015. While I was into band tees because of the alternative music and because of the music itself, a lot of people were into band tees because of brands like Fear of God. And a little bit cringy, but I started kind of styling band tees in the same way that Kanye or Travis Scott did. Oh boy, things have changed a lot because saying you like Travis and Kanye now has a very different connotation. So I bought Fear of God style jeans from brands like PacSun, H&M, Urban Outfitters, and one of these pants that I bought were a pair of knockoff Balmain biker jeans from Macy's. And at one point, this one kid in my class named Ezra came up to me and said, "Hey, I like your fake Balmain biker jeans." Well, I don't think he said that. I think he said, "I just like your jeans" at the time. And then we became friends because he was also into a Fear of God type thing. And he ended up introducing me to two more of his friends, one named Tommy Pointer and the other named Elliot Guzman. And they were both my very good close friends in Minneapolis, Minnesota in high school. We pretty much just went thrifting every day and showed each other new brands all the time and started really challenging each other to grow in our own fashion thing. They were all super into streetwear brands that they showed me, like Palace, Gosha, Supreme, Yeezy, the list goes on of that kind of thing. And eventually they showed me Grailed, where we could all kind of buy things. There was a particular piece that I saw on the Grailed homepage that totally changed my life, and that was the Raf Simons 2001 New Order Closer Parka. And I became obsessed with this piece, and it changed my life because I saw this really cool referential piece of clothing to Joy Division and New Order, a band which I loved, and I realized that clothes could kind of reflect bands or culture and other artistic things I was interested in more of just a way than being on a t-shirt. Clothes could be more creative in how it was intertextual, and it could be very referential, and there could be a sort of lore and references to other things in history which I really appreciated. And while I couldn't afford that Raf Simons piece at the time, I still can't, and I really couldn't afford any Raf Simons pieces at the time, I became interested in it. I also became interested in other similar brands like Undercover and Number 9, which also had a lot of punk imagery in them as well. We'd all just have a lot of fun introducing each other to new brands. For example, Tommy got into Margiela and Helmut Lang before any of us else did. Elliot was really big into Capital and Visvim, and Ezra was super into brands like Balenciaga, Craig Green, and Saint Laurent. He also put me on a minor Saint Laurent knockoff wave for 1 second, and that was not very good. And we all showed each other a lot more than just fashion. We also showed each other music. I put them on a lot of like different alternative bands. Like I showed them like the Smiths and like Duster at the time, and then they showed me things like Playboy Cardi, Lucky, like O3 Greedo and like Warhol SS and stuff like that. Also, Tommy showed me Blade in like 2017 before he even released anything big. We also all wanted to like make clothes someday and have our own brands, and so we'd help each other. I remember I would show them like old like Black Flag or like television graphics, and then we would like print those graphics, modify them, and like print them onto t-shirts or button-ups or whatever else. It was super wholesome. We were also really bad at making clothes at the time. Now, eventually I discovered a brand called Rick Owens, and this was the first brand that I got introduced to that was more of the actual design rather than me just being into it for its cultural references. Also, if you're wondering how did I afford Rick Owens when I was 16 and in high school, you guys have to remember it was also like a different time back then. Rick Owens, while there was like a subculture around it and there were definitely people who were buying it, it was nowhere near as popular or inflated in price as it was today. I remember I was able to get Ramones for like $200 at the time, and I bought multiple pairs of Ramones for around that price point. And then I was also able to buy like outerwear pieces for $150, jeans for $100, pants for like $175. You could find deals like that back then because there weren't as many people looking, and the prices just were nowhere near as inflated, and there wasn't that type of hype around it. And a similar thing could be said about brands like Undercover or Number 9 at the time. I remember I got a few Undercover shirts for like $40 at the time. But at the time, the one thing about me versus all my other friends when it came to fashion and how we were into fashion is all my other friends were much more into styling and their own personal style. They were all very good at like making sure they looked good in the pieces they bought, and I kind of liked clothes more from a collector's standpoint. I liked cool pieces and I liked the lore of them, and I really didn't understand proportions at the time or like how pieces were supposed to fit together. I would just kind of like take two pieces which I thought both were cool individually and kind of slap them together in an outfit. And anyway, I bricked a lot of fits, but my friends were eventually able to challenge me, clown on me, and really come alongside me enough to like help me get like a sense of style and start being able to like put fits together in a better way. And if it wasn't for my friends Tommy, Ezra, and Elliot, I probably wouldn't be able to put together fits at all well. Those guys are like some of my best friends in the world. Eventually, Tommy moved to Texas, and I ended up studying abroad in Italy for a little while, and we kind of grew apart, and we all still hang out with each other whenever we can, and we're always texting each other, keeping up. We weren't able to rely on each other as much for fashion advice and getting into fashion, and because of that, I kind of went more online where I got my style from, and I became a bigger part of the archive community. A lot of the reason I liked clothes at the time was from like a collector's standpoint, and so the archive community was really cool to me. I liked uncovering like the stories within the clothes, figuring out all the references, and I started talking to people online about them. I started my YouTube because I wanted to talk about like all the different references and cool things that I found about the different archive brands I was into. And also my style just became archive in general rather than just like Rick and Undercover and Raf. I got into other brands more like Helmet, Margiela. I also started buying some CDG pieces for the low, and this was around in like 2018, 2019. Eventually, I moved to Seattle to go to college from Minnesota, and the reason for that was Minnesota is just freezing cold. But my style began to change as I moved to Seattle. I got more gothic and darker with how I dressed. My style got a lot more avant-garde, and I started pulling pieces from Yoji a little bit more and the Mühlmeister. I also started pulling a little bit from artisanal references such as CCP and Guidi. Looking back on it, it was very like proto like what Destroy Lonely Opium is now, just like the all black aesthetic. But yeah, my style was just generally very gothic, black, and avant-garde, and I didn't necessarily have any particular brand which I liked buying. During COVID, things changed again, and actually changed a lot during this time. While I was still into avant-garde fashion during COVID, I kind of found a newfound love for CDG, and particularly CDG's men lines Homme and Homme Plus. I had really admired CDG for a long time, but I hadn't really gone beyond copying like generally just like t-shirts and stuff like that, because CDG was a lot more colorful and maximalist, But during COVID, I decided to start becoming like a really profound collector of CDG. I probably bought like up to like 40 to 50 CDG Homme Plus pieces alone. And it was a lot more maximalist and colorful at the time. I also bought a few Craig pieces here and there and Rick pieces as well. But the thing was I really only started buying these three brands and these three brands mainly through COVID. I would really just wear CDG with CDG, Craig with Craig, and Rick with Rick. And I found myself kind of getting into this place where I wasn't being super creative with my style. And as COVID was going and it started ending, my lifestyle began changing a little bit. One, I was getting outdoors a lot more. I started going hiking and climbing mountains and doing all that kind of fun stuff more and more and more, and my wardrobe just wasn't practical for that at all. So I ended up starting to sell a lot of the CDG, Rick, and Craig pieces which I had accumulated. I kept a few very special ones that just meant a lot to me and tried to start over and have a much more minimalist wardrobe. And I want my wardrobe to be more minimalist for a couple of reasons. One is that I have been working out. I've been gaining a lot of muscle mass for the past year. And when you're working out, your body changes a lot, especially as you're going from different types of ways of working out. So I want my closet to be a little bit more minimal so I don't have to worry about buying a crazy maximalist piece that's supposed to fit in a specific way and know that in a couple of months it might not fit me in the same way because I either get bigger or smaller or whatever happens from working out. But I also just want to be more refined and practical, because well, the truth of the matter is, as much as I may love CDG or Rick or any of the other avant-garde brands that I liked, they often aren't really comfortable in your day-to-day life. And something I've been wanting to do for years is to make my own clothes. I mean, since I was like 16 hanging out with my original friends, Tommy, Ezra, and Elliot, I've wanted to make clothes and have clothes that like tell a story. And so for the past few years, I've been developing my own clothes and working on that, which I'm sure you guys will hear more about at some point. But for my own clothes, I wanted them to be comfortable, practical, and still tell a story. And I've added elements of like gorpcore and kind of technical wear to kind of incorporate not only like the clothes that I've been making for the past 2 years, but also because they've kind of reflected on my lifestyle as I work out almost every day now. And I'm also out in the outdoors all the time. So that's pretty much why my style has changed from being extremely like archivy and gothic. But with that being said, with my style right now, the one thing that I feel is missing is kind of the storytelling element, which I really liked. And I'm hoping as I get more into making my own clothes, I'm able to kind of tell my own story in some sort of way. But anyway, that's why my style has changed. Just because I've changed and my lifestyle has changed pretty much. Let me know if you guys like this type of video or what kind of videos you want to see in the future. Again, my name is Karsten Craning. Please like, subscribe, and have a great day.